Hey Lab Rats, it's Jessica.
And this is Kendra, and you're listening to
Lucid Lab. Welcome to Lab Reports number 8. We're happy to be here.
And we haven't recorded because last weekend both of our parents were in town
Yeah,
at the same time,
weird.
which was weird.
Yeah.
And my parents, they were coming out here to see old neighbors that used to live next to them that happened to move to Brighton, which
Weird.
isn't far from me.
Yeah.
And they were having like a little reunion. And then, I got to hang out with them too.
Yeah, my family was here and it was really good because I always miss my mama and my dad, and we did a lot of eating out. I decided I shouldn't eat for like 4 weeks because I ate so much that I just hated food by the end of the weekend.
When you eat out a lot consecutively, you
Yeah.
do. You get tired of it. It's like nothing sounds good. I
No.
get to where I just want to eat a salad.
Yeah, that's all I want to is just a salad.
It's like I need something not heavy because restaurant food is always heavy.
It was all really good. Like I took my mom to some fancy places and
Aw.
got to eat some stuff that we wouldn't normally eat. So
Yeah.
it was really good food. But yeah, I still feel so heavy. And that was like a week ago.
It takes a minute for it all to like process. I always felt that way when I would travel because you have to eat out every meal.
Yeah.
And by the end of like a week on the road, I would just feel
Gross.
bloated.
I feel gross
Disgusting.
still. I feel like a big Oompa Loompa.
Well, you
still.
don't look like an Oompa Loompa, so.
Yes, I do. Just kidding. I have been eating stuff like avocados and like bananas, and that's really all I can stomach lately. That's it.
Yeah, just detox.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Well, I'm home alone this week, so I imagine myself eating a lot of girl dinners.
Yeah.
I'm actually looking forward to it.
I think that's all that's in my fridge is girl dinners at
Yeah.
the moment. Cheese.
Cheese, meat, and fruit. What else do I
Yep,
need?
fruit.
I'll eat some veggies too. I have a whole veggie tray left over from a
yeah.
barbecue I went to, and I've just been munching on that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why don't I do this more often? Just have raw veggies and ranch.
I know. I really need to get some more veggies. I just cut up a huge pineapple before you came. It's in my fridge.
Ooh, that's
If
good.
you want some later.
I might. I love, especially when it's refrigerated. Pineapple is so good. Or frozen. We do the frozen pineapple when we're in a really hot place, and it's like a popsicle.
Interesting. I've never had it like that.
We can go ahead and get started. We have a couple of mini episodes for you guys and a couple of stories. So.
Yay. And I think we're going to start with a lab report. And
Okay.
I'm going first. So I don't know who this is from yet, but it says, "Hello, beautiful lucid ladies.
I like them already.
I'm an Oompa Loompa today, so thank you."
We are not feeling beautiful this morning.
I just have to say how much of a fan I am of your podcast. Every Tuesday, I anticipate a new episode and love getting stuff done while I listen to you guys. I'm from New Mexico,
Ooh.
born and raised, and I'm bringing a story to you both from my childhood.
Okay.
Now, to give some context before I get into this weird interaction, I have been going to counseling since I was about 11 years old for mental health issues, and many times a therapist will ask you, have you ever seen something that you weren't sure was there or not?
Okay. Yeah.
Wow. And I always gave this incident as an example, but they never really went into it with me. They just wrote it down and moved on to the next question.
Well, that's not very helpful if you're trying to process it.
It's because they don't know what to say. So, did this happen or not? I believe it to be true because I can't make what I experienced to be something my mind just made up. Alrighty.
Okay.
Let's see. I was about 13 years old when this happened, and it all started when I looked out my bedroom window.
Okay.
It was bedtime, probably around 9 or 10, and I was in my room getting ready to go to bed as I had school the next morning. My mother was out of town on a work trip, and my father was asleep in their room, which was just across the hallway from me, and my brother was asleep in the back of the house in his room. On this particular night, I could hear the wind blowing outside, and so I was curious and looked outside. The wind was blowing hard, and I looked into the tree right outside my window to see the branches swinging side to side, but something caught my eye as I was now looking to the left side of my yard towards my neighbor's yard. I did a double take, and I even closed my curtains, refocused my eyes, and looked again. Coming towards me was a wolf.
Okay. Is that in New Mexico?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, here too, right?
Yeah,
but
they're in
in a
Colorado.
neighborhood, that's
Yeah, you wouldn't see them.
no.
Mm-mm.
That's more in the mountains. I mean, coyotes are in neighborhoods, but that's when they can't find their food out there. Or maybe it's
A
like,
spiritual being.
what's the guy's name from Twilight?
Jacob?
Or maybe it's Jacob.
Could be. That's what I'm going to put my money on. It's Jacob.
It's Jacob.
It's okay. It's a love interest.
But as I was now paralyzed in place, I saw that this being had a head and upper torso of a wolf, but the lower half of the body was human.
That's weird.
He's mid-shift.
Right. He's about to become a beautiful man for you.
I saw human feet and toes, and it was wearing torn jeans, but the upper half was covered in gray and black fur.
It's a werewolf.
Yes. Its yellow eyes were terrifying, and its mouth was open, showing all its teeth and drool hanging and falling to the ground. Ew.
Ew, that doesn't sound hot.
No, that's not sexy.
Keep changing.
It was getting closer to me, and my reflex was to shut my curtains and get away from my window. My first thought was to go wake my dad, but then a deep, eerie voice came into my mind. I'll kill him.
Whoa.
I didn't understand, but I went to reach for the doorknob, and another thought happened. I'll kill all of you.
Fuck. That's scary.
Yeah. Wait, so that the wolf's talking to her.
I would assume.
Okay. At first, I read it as like she's going to go kill him.
Oh, like, okay. No, I would assume he's like telekinetically. What's the word? Is that the word?
Telepathically.
I was like, it's not telekinetic.
He's moving her brain.
I assume he's telepathically communicating with her.
Yeah, I get it now.
So he could be an alien. They do that too.
That's true. I thought about calling my sister who just lived up the street, but then I heard, I'll kill her and your nieces and nephews. This is getting fucked up.
This guy's on a vengeance mission here. What the fuck?
Well, and he knows that she has nieces and nephews.
Okay.
He doesn't want to date you. We take it back. Or maybe he does.
I was about to say, he's not the kind of guy.
Her all to himself.
He's a toxic wolf man, werewolf, whatever the fuck he is. Don't date him.
I couldn't understand what was happening until I took another peek out the window, and he was sitting right in front of my window.
Oh my God.
Just staring at me with those yellow eyes. I quickly closed my curtain and backed away crying and falling to the floor. And then I heard another thought. Yes. Was this creature talking to me through telepathy? I remember repeating over and over, leave me alone, please. Leave me alone.
Okay.
Well, if this is real, then it's scary. It's freaking scary. What are you going to do
I don't
with
know.
a wolf outside your door?
I'd be frozen.
Who's talking to you?
Yes.
And if he has jeans on still, that means that he was becoming the wolf, actually. My brain just thought of that.
So he had just transitioned from
He was transitioning from a man.
You're right. The jeans wouldn't come back.
Poor werewolves. They have to buy a lot of clothes.
They do. Better get some cheap jeans.
I just remember Twilight when you just see the clothes go.
They just shoot off.
And what do you do? Just leave jeans and clothes around the woods?
I'm a little older than you. I don't know if you ever watched the movie Teen Wolf growing up.
Oh, I'm
Michael
sure
J. Fox.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, his pants tore too, like his clothes. I remember him busting out.
Did he have stuff hidden to go
he
change
did
into?
Later, but I also remember a scene where he was running naked because he like changed real quick back to human and was like, uh-oh, because he was a teenager and that's awkward.
Whoever created werewolves didn't think of that.
True. Or you just walk around with really baggy clothes all the time, just waiting.
They'd have to be really baggy. I got off the ground and told myself to get out of my room and get protection. I did not go get my dad. Instead, I ran into the kitchen and grabbed a knife. I stood in my front room now, clutching the large knife. Somehow I knew it was following me, and I knew it was now at my front room window. I kept repeating in my head, leave me alone. And then my mom popped into my head, and I heard, I'll kill her too. Nobody messes with mama.
That's when it went too far.
It went way too far there. The nieces and the nephews was okay, but mom.
And the dad too. She's like, I'll sacrifice dad, but not mom. This is scary.
Yeah, I felt hopeless that I couldn't help myself or my family. I couldn't understand why it was doing this to me. I remember feeling lost, and I sat down on my couch and just prayed. After a while, I must have fallen asleep because the next thing I remember was waking up and still clutching the knife to my chest. That's scary. What if you fall down on that while you're sleeping?
Yeah.
That is scary.
Not
be
good
careful
to be
with
sleeping
knives.
with a knife.
I know people that would sleep with big butcher knives under their pillows.
No.
I can't trust myself.
I would like slice my wrist open somehow or something.
I know, just like
grabbing your pillow and then it's like.
Yeah, that's scary. Don't do that.
No.
Put mace in your drawer or something. I don't know.
Or if you want to have a knife, put it in your top drawer.
Yeah, put it somewhere you can grab it, but not sleep with it.
No.
That's scary. Did I imagine all of that? Did I have a mental episode, or did I witness a creature and it wanted to make sure I didn't tell anyone? I don't know. I still don't know. I have no idea. Just this image of this dark creature that has half wolf, half human burned into my memory, coming towards me, and the sound of its voice in my head. Am I crazy, or did I see a skinwalker? Oh, I didn't think about the skinwalker. Because that's what they do, right?
They can be anything, right?
Yeah, they can be anything.
Yeah. I imagine a skinwalker similar to the book It, because
I haven't read it.
I know if everyone's watched the movie, you see the clown, but in the book, it was called It because it would just form into your greatest fear. So I remember one of the children seeing a werewolf actually in the book, and one of them seeing the clown, and then one of them seeing a big spider.
Yeah, well, that's in the movie. I do remember a spider.
Okay. It just manifests as whatever, like it tailors itself to what would scare you the most. And that's what I think of with a skinwalker.
Which is creepier, and it would make sense that it could talk to you then. After my incident as growing up, I found out about skinwalkers and made the connection that that could have been what I saw. I have other paranormal experiences, but this one always tops the others.
Yeah, I could see why. And isn't New Mexico known for skinwalkers?
Yeah, I think it's something to do with the Native American groups there.
That could make a lot of sense, actually.
I believe I've seen an episode or something that was focused on the skinwalkers there, which is scary because I grew up there.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever had an experience, but I also don't remember a lot of my childhood, which I've said before. So
you may have.
Maybe a lot of people have, and they just don't remember. And she remembers for some odd reason.
And even though she remembers, she's doubting herself because I think a lot of us do that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, was that a lucid dream? Did I make it up?
Yeah.
Especially when you're young. How old did she say she was? I think she was like 11 or 12. I can't remember.
She was 13.
Yeah. So it's easy to doubt yourself when you're younger, but you're also more aware of supernatural forces when you're younger. So
I just realized I've been saying she. This could be a boy.
Sorry.
Sometimes our brains just make up who we think it is.
True.
So sorry about that. If you are a boy.
Yes.
Because I'm at the end and they are anonymous. So it says, I am a full believer of ghosts and know we are not alone on this planet. There are different beings with different abilities out there, and I am glad to know that I am not alone. Thank you, ladies, for your platform and for believing. That's all from me now. Sincerely, Lucid Labs #1 fan.
Oh, I like it. Sorry if you are not she.
Although, as a #1 fan, I might know who you are.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, we have a few that claim to be.
Yes, true. We'll take them all. You can all be our #1 fan.
Yes, don't fight.
There's Yes, we love you all. And thank you very much, #1 fan, for writing in.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you experienced that, though. That sounds really traumatizing if you're, having to talk about it in therapy now.
Well, it wasn't about talking about it in therapy. I think it was just they were
asking. Yeah, you're right.
Have you seen something?
And it would be hard to respond as a therapist if I heard a story like that because you can't for sure tell them if it was real or not.
Yeah.
Like you just have to say, how did that make you feel? Let's work through the feelings associated with that situation.
Yeah. New Mexico to me has always been a scary place.
That's it.
I mean, it's just open. At least where I'm from, it's the desert.
Right.
And it's dark.
Yeah, I could see that at night. Like there is no light.
It's very dark there compared to here.
Yeah.
Like walking around here. When I go down there and visit, that's kind of what I remember. Just in the neighborhoods, it's dark. There's not a lot of street lighting.
No street lights, yeah.
It's just not, it's not lit up there.
They need to plan better in their cities.
That's actually something that I remember going down there recently. I was driving at night and I was trying to go see someone in my family. I just remember how dark it was driving around just the residential neighborhoods. I'm like, this is dark.
That just leaves it open for all the spooky creatures and even scarier
real people,
psycho men to find you.
Be careful in New Mexico.
And everywhere, honestly.
And everywhere, I know, but I'm from there, so I can say that. I ran into a woman recently with my mom. We were on a walk when she was here. And the woman we didn't ask what her name was, but I left the conversation saying like, I wonder if her name was Kathy because she was a chatty Kathy.
You're like, okay.
And she talked forever, but she was talking about how she was thinking of moving to New Mexico because she loves it and stuff. And I'm like, what is the draw for people to go to New Mexico? I mean, there are beautiful parts.
Some people love the desert. I think the same thing with Arizona. I know a lot of people who love it. I can't handle the heat. That's the main reason. Yeah. There is something pretty to the desert landscape with the cactus and the
I know. I guess I'm just someone that needs the greenery.
I know.
I need the greenery.
I mean, there's times I even feel like Colorado's not green enough for me.
Yeah, it just depends where you are.
Yeah. When I went to New England last summer, I was like, man, Colorado is so brown. And dead looking comparatively.
Oh, yeah. I don't know where it was. I think it was flying into North Carolina, and my eyes were just like, whoa, look at how lush that is.
So green.
So green.
Yeah.
America's crazy. There's just such a vast difference of climate and landscapes and stuff throughout America. It's like we have the rest of the world in our states.
But we're huge, so it makes sense. Yeah. Just like I think of China's the same way. They have like the super cold mountains up by Russia, and then they have the tropical climates down by the shore.
Well, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
What do we have next?
So I'm going to move us into our first mini episode of the day. And this was a story that I originally had penciled in as a normal episode, but then when I started researching it, the details and everything around it just didn't seem like it was going to be long enough to fill a 2 hours. And I didn't want to commit an entire episode. But now that we're doing mini episodes, I brought it back.
Cool.
And this is the story of Alferd Packer, and he was known as the Colorado Cannibal.
Oh, go away.
Interesting thing about Alferd Packer is that he is pretty famous here in Colorado.
I've never heard of him.
I hadn't either, but apparently there is this is kind of morbid, I guess. There is a restaurant at the University of Colorado in Boulder called the Packer Grill.
Interesting. Okay.
And it's like a tongue-in-cheek thing, making fun of it. And then also Trey Parker, who you might know from South Park. He's one of the creators. Yes. The very first screenplay musical he ever wrote was about Alferd Packer, and it was a musical called Cannibal.
Oh.
And it was
fun.
So that's just what I'll lead with. And this is a pretty interesting story. So let's talk about Alferd. He was born Alfred Greiner Packer.
Okay.
But later would change his name to Alferd
because he preferred Alferd.
Well, I think it comes to the fact that he had a very tense family life, and it was kind of his way of breaking away from, his parents named him Alfred, and he was like, fuck you parents, I'm going to be Alferd now. So
look, Mom, I put the R after the E.
So there. So if you hear me go back and forth, it's kind of hard to say Alferd for me for some reason. So if you hear me say Alfred, just know I'm trying.
Let it go.
So he was born in Allegheny County in Pennsylvania, which is near Pittsburgh, on January 21st of 1842.
Oh, whoa. So we're going back.
This is old timey cannibalism.
Okay. Well, yeah, I didn't hear about it recently. The last cannibal thing I heard about was, I think it was California, the dude walking around with a leg, chomping on it.
I have not heard of
it. It was recently. It was this year.
Was he on bath salts? He had to have been.
I don't know. I have no idea. But he was eating some dude's foot or leg.
That sounds like some straight up zombie shit.
Yeah.
The scary part is there probably is a lot of cannibalism going on. It's just not known.
Yeah. All the elite people are eating everybody. Mm-hmm. I know they eat people.
So Alferd was born to James Packer and Esther Greiner, and
he should have changed his last name from Greiner to Grinder.
As I mentioned, he had a tense relationship. In fact, some places said it was a very bitter relationship, and he moved out at a very young age, which I think a lot of people did. He was only like 14 years old, and he, for whatever reason, moved to Indiana and became a cabinet maker.
Okay.
And then a couple years later, decided he didn't like to do that anymore. He moved to Minnesota and worked as a shoemaker. So he was doing all the craftsy stuff.
He was a maker.
He then joined the Union Army during the American Civil War. 8 months later, he was honorably discharged as he was diagnosed with epilepsy, and he kept having seizures.
Oh, yeah.
Can't really be in a war. I can't imagine.
I feel so bad for people that have epilepsy. It's so scary.
So scary because you don't know what's going to trigger it.
That and just the helplessness of the episode itself.
Right.
So scary.
So after being discharged, he kind of felt lost for a while, and he just was roaming around working numerous jobs over the next 9 years.
And his next thought was, you know what? I should try and eat people.
Maybe that will solve my medical issues.
Yeah. Brains will solve epilepsy.
Everything.
Yeah.
It's possible the medical field back then may have recommended something like that.
Did you know that eating brains of people is actually horrible for you?
We're going to talk about that. I think that's in here somewhere.
Yeah, I heard about that recently. There's something about, okay, don't eat other people. I think we know this.
Number one.
But eating the brain is bad. But Kendra's going to tell us. She said so.
As always, we're ahead of each other.
I know. We got to stop.
So some of the things we won't. We can't help it. It's who we are. Some of the jobs he worked while figuring it out was a hunter. He was a wagon teamster. He worked as a ranch hand and field worker, but his seizures just kept getting worse. He was never able to really keep a job for long.
Yeah,
so that's sad. And there wasn't a lot of help back then. I don't even know how much epilepsy was understood. So a lot of people probably just didn't want to be around him. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somehow he ended up out here in the new Colorado territory working as a guide, which he didn't really make a good guide because he had no like sense of direction and would often lose his way.
So he's not from here. That's interesting.
Yeah. So then when they realized he wasn't a very good guide, he ended up in the mining field, which everyone was out here mining for gold. He never really made very much money and he decided to move on to the Utah territory.
Okay.
It was known at this time and noted by many people who knew Alferd for very long. They just had a feeling about him. They described it as just a general dislike and distrust for him. They claimed he had an argumentative personality and he had a reputation as a thief. Not the guy you probably want to hang out with very much.
Nope.
He ended up near Salt Lake City, and there were 20 men that were looking for a guide to take them to the new place to be, which was Breckenridge in Colorado Territory.
Oh.
There was another group that had found a massive strike of gold, and everybody was like, this is our place to go and become rich.
If only they knew what Breckenridge would become.
Right.
It's crazy.
So this was November of 1873, and this group of 20 men were pretty much strangers to each other, but they were bonded together in hopes of striking gold.
Mm-hmm.
They took off from Salt Lake City and they ran into Alferd Packer about 25 miles from their starting point near Provo, Utah. Alferd approached the group and asked where they were headed. And when he heard they were headed to the gold country, he said, I want to join you. And he offered his services as a guide. These guys don't know that he sucks as a guide, but
yeah.
He had no money with him. He had no supplies. And the men were kind of apprehensive. He just seemed like a
pick-me?
A mooch. I don't know. I'm like, what's the word? But he somehow convinced them that he would know exactly how to get there. He lied because that's what he did, that he knew people who had already been to Breckenridge. He probably said he had been there himself. They took him along and let him lead as their guide.
Yikes.
They didn't really have a choice because none of them knew Colorado geography, so they felt like he was their best bet. But unfortunately, they didn't realize that Alferd really knew nothing about Colorado territory either.
What a wild time back then. Hey, you want to go to Colorado? Yeah, just go in that direction.
Right? You're like, is there a map? They're like, not really. We just moved here. We just pushed out all the, original natives that know the land.
Yeah.
And now we're just free-for-alling it.
That's crazy. Although back then they would push them out of the land, but they would keep like relations with some of them for this reason.
Yeah. And we'll actually talk about that here in a minute because that's who's going to save some of these people.
Oh.
So members of this original 20-man party realized quickly that Alferd had vastly overstated his experience of being a guide. And they also noticed that he was really greedy with the rations of food. He was like squirreling it away whenever they would eat. And one of the guys described him as being very lazy and obstinate. The other thing that kind of freaked them all out is he would start having seizures because he had epilepsy. And he just, to them, became more of a liability than a help.
Yeah. I see that.
But they were stuck with him and they didn't really have any other options. It's not like you can just call somebody different to come help. And they were coming into the winter time at this point, and they had been on the trail for a while. And unfortunately for them, the winter of 1874 was a particularly harsh winter. There were heavy January snowstorms. Traveling by whatever landmarks they had been told, I'm guessing when you stop somewhere, they would tell you different landmarks to look for along the way.
Yeah.
The snowstorms were making it very, very hard to even find those.
Scary.
So the party was relying on compasses and whatever sketchy maps they had back then.
That is sketchy. It's not like you can get an aerial view.
They soon came to find out that they were lost and that Alferd Packer, being Mr. Guide, knew nothing about actual survival. And they were at the point where they were starting to look at their horses as possible food source. They had already started eating their horse's feed just to try and survive.
Yeah.
Fortunately for them, just a strike of good luck, they stumbled into the encampment of Chief Eerie, which is outside of present-day Delta, Colorado. So they were actually headed in the right way.
They made it here.
They were a little bit north, probably a lot north, probably about 40 miles north of Breckenridge. Well,
that's pretty darn close.
So somehow they had stumbled the right way. This was a very friendly tribe of Native Americans, and the chief greeted them as welcome guests and offered them food, shelter, and he also gave them some advice. He said, you should postpone your expedition until early spring because it's just going to keep getting worse.
Yeah, you're going into the mountains. They're already in the mountains, but
they're kind of down in the valley because this is near Grand Junction. So they would have been headed straight into like pretty treacherous territory.
Yeah.
Chief Eerie basically let the miners know in no uncertain terms that if they continued to push onward, they would die. But they were so enamored by the thought of getting to Breckenridge, and they had this FOMO that if they didn't get there first, that it would all be taken. Chief Eerie realized that their greed had the best of them, and so he offered directions on how to get to Breckenridge, and then he offered them food, which was really kind, actually, and said, if you want to do it, I guess go for it.
Yeah, he felt bad. They're all dead men walking, and he's like, here's some food.
He's like, at least you won't die hungry, maybe. There were quite a few men who were like, you know what? I'm going to pay attention to the chief who's lived here his whole life.
That's smart.
Alferd said, I don't even know why anybody believed him, but he was like, I know how to get there, guys. If you follow me, we're just going to go straight through. And it was kind of the mountains going up towards Telluride and Eerie, which if you know of Colorado, those are some pretty steep, like 14ers.
Yep.
He said, if we just go straight through, we'll get through fast enough. It'll be fine. And he had 5 of the men that were crazy enough or greedy enough to follow him.
Yeah, I'd say greedy at this point.
The rest of them are like, no, we're going to stay here with Chief Eerie and the Ute tribe and just eat and be warm.
Yeah, exactly.
On February 9th, Alferd Packer and the 5 others in his party left, intending to traverse the mountains towards Breckenridge. The group was comprised of Shannon Wilson Bell, James Humphrey, Frank Butcher Miller, George California Noon, everyone had nicknames, I guess, and Israel Swan. They had a 75-mile journey ahead of them, so I guess I was wrong when I said it was only 30 miles away. Delta's apparently further. They went into the mountains, in my mind and everyone else's mind, very unprepared.
Yeah.
They thought it would take them 14 days to get to Breckenridge. I'm sorry, they weren't headed to Breckenridge first. They were stopping at a place called the Los Pinos Indian Agency. They were told by the Ute tribe that it would take them 14 days to get there.
Okay.
They didn't have any snowshoes with them.
Okay.
They had minimal matches and no flint to start a fire, and they didn't really have heavy clothing. The main thing that they went into the mountains with were 2 rifles, 1 pistol, a couple of knives, a hatchet, and minimal amount of ammunition.
They were going to kill a bear to have a jacket.
I don't know what they were going to do. So the last time anyone saw this group of 6 men, the 5 plus Alfred, leave was February 9th. Then on April 16th, so that's 2 months later, Alferd Packer emerged from the woods alone and stumbled his way across a frozen lake to the Los Pinos Indian Agency.
Whoa, that's a long time. Wow.
He showed up and he had rags tied around his feet.
Ooh.
There were men sitting around eating breakfast when the door was flung open and Alfred stood before them begging for food and shelter. He carried with him a rifle, a knife, a steel coffee pot, and a satchel. The men hurried him inside, sat him down at the table, and gave him some food, which he vomited as quickly as he ate it.
Oh.
Packer said that his digestion was altered as a result of his prolonged near starvation. So what do you do when you can't eat? They gave him several shots of whiskey.
Oh.
After he had liquored himself up, he began to relay the story of what led him to show up at Los Pinos that day. He stated that after leaving Eerie's camp, he had become snowblind and was lagging behind the remainder of his party. He felt like he had become a burden for them. He claimed that a member of the party named Israel Swan supplied him with a rifle since he was lagging behind the rest. And then he said they just straight up abandoned him. He claimed he was then forced to survive on his own and make his way out of the mountains with minimal ammunition and virtually no supplies, and he ate nothing but roots and rosebuds the entire time he was alone.
That's not going to do very much for you.
The men at the agency listened to his story, but they found it rather odd that even though he claimed to have been lost in the wilderness for a little over 2 months, he did not look at all malnourished.
Oh.
His face actually was reported as being bloated, and his overall physique was not skeletal. He actually looked a little overweight.
Interesting.
Alferd claimed he was flat broke, and so he sold the Winchester rifle he had in his possessions to a major there for $10, which was equivalent to about $269 today.
Yeah.
He stayed at the Los Pinos agency for 10 days, and then he expressed that he wished to go back home to Pennsylvania, and he headed out to the nearby town to buy supplies for his journey.
That's the last thing I would want to do if I was lost in the forest, is to hurry up and go on another journey.
I know. When Alferd reached Saguache, he made arrangements to room in Dolan's saloon. Larry Dolan, the owner, claimed that Alferd spent around $100, which was equivalent to $2,693.
Where did he get that from?
Exactly. And he also mentioned that Alferd offered to lend him another $300.
Okay.
He also spent $78 in Otto Mears' general store, and it was claimed that he had several different wallets in his possession.
Oh, he should have not kept the wallets.
He's not the smartest guy. He was drinking heavily in the saloon, and after becoming intoxicated, he gave conflicting stories regarding his journey and how he came to be separated from the other men. This led to quick gossip among the townspeople, given his inconsistent story and now his seemingly endless cash flow, and the fact that his party was still unheard from. Preston Nutter, who was a member of the original 20-party group who had stayed at the Ute settlement, arrived in Saguache around this time.
Oh, okay.
And he ran into Mr. Alferd Packer in the saloon, drinking and carrying on. And he said, "Hey, Alfred, where's the rest of the guys that were with you?"
I ate them.
This is when Alferd came up with another story of what happened in the woods. He started with the story that he had already told before, where he had been abandoned and left with Israel Swan's rifle. He claimed he was forced to leave the party to an unknown fate and that he was eating mainly rosebuds, but then he added in that he occasionally ate squirrel, and that's why he didn't look as skeletal. Preston thought his story was odd, and he knew Alferd Packer to have been kind of that weirdo that lies about shit. He thought it very peculiar that Israel Swan would have given his rifle over to Alfred. He knew Israel, and that didn't make sense to him that they would have given one guy the rifle and left the other 4 guys with just one rifle between them.
Yeah.
He also noticed that Alfred had in his possession a skinning knife that had belonged to Frank Miller. He asked Alfred how he happened to have Frank Miller's knife, and that's when Alfred said, "Oh, he stuck it into a tree and then walked off, and I just grabbed it."
Okay.
Preston was convinced that something nefarious had happened up there, and he decided to take it to the head of the agency, which was kind of the law enforcement of Saguache at the time, and a man named General Charles Adams. And he said, "I don't believe this story coming from Alfred. I think we need to investigate what happened to these other 5 men." While they were interviewing Alfred again and trying to sort out what could have happened, 2 Ute tribesmen rode into the agency, and they were holding strips of dried human flesh they had found on a hilltop while hunting.
Ooh.
Reportedly, Alferd Packer fainted on the spot.
Yeah. He was like, "You ruined my jerky."
He's like, "I'm screwed.
That was drying for a reason."
When he came to, he began begging for mercy. He then started telling another tale of what happened in the mountains to the cops, or whatever they were called back then.
Vigilantes.
In this first official statement, he claimed that the men had left Ure's camp with what they thought was sufficient food for the anticipated 14-day journey ahead of them. Before they knew it, provisions were exhausted owing to the rough terrain and just the expenditure of energy it takes to traverse a mountain.
Yeah.
He said they survived for days on roots dug from the ground, pine gum, rosebuds, and the occasional rabbit. After a few days of no wildlife activity due to the extreme cold and eating virtually nothing but roots, he claimed that the men started to eye each other in an unsettling way. He left camp to gather firewood, and he returned to find 4 men around the murdered body of Israel Swan. He said that he had been struck in the head with a hatchet, and the other 4 had begun to butcher Swan. Packer felt like he was in danger, so he begrudgingly joined them.
Oh, okay.
He claimed at this time several $1,000s was found on Israel's swan, and they divided the money between the 5 men. They consumed the most agreeable parts of Israel's swan. They packed some up to take with them as they moved on, and that was when Alferd took Israel's rifle. Within a couple of days, however, they found themselves out of food.
How long does a human body last? Only after a couple days, you guys are going to consider another one?
Apparently. This is his story.
Okay. And he ate brains, so he ain't right in the head.
He said at that point, he and 3 of the other men decided in secret that Miller would be the next one to go. Alferd confessed that Miller was a stocky man, and he was chosen because he had the most amount of flesh. They killed him with a hatchet blow to the head while he was stooped over picking up wood for the fire. Then they butchered and consumed him. That is when Alferd took Frank's knife that Preston had noticed he had on him.
Yeah.
And then he said that Frank's share of Israel's money was redistributed among the 4 men, and they continued on their journey. The next to be sacrificed was Humphrey, and followed not too long after by George Noon. At last it was just down to Packer and Shannon Bell.
And they fought to the death.
Pretty much. They each had a rifle at this point and a couple of $1,000s. They agreed that they would say the 4 men had perished from the elements and were buried with dignity, vowing never to speak of cannibalism. They felt no one would ever believe it was necessary, and after trekking for a few days with little else eaten other than a rabbit and some roots, the men were exhausted and they set up camp next to a large lake. Packer said that a few days after this, Shannon Bell snapped out of his blanket and screamed that he could not take it anymore. He told Alferd that one of them was going to die for food. He snatched his rifle and came at Alferd with it, ready to bash his skull in.
What about fish in the lake?
I guess it's frozen.
Oh, that's true.
Alferd deflected the blow and struck Shannon in the head with the hatchet. He claimed that at this point, the only fear he had left was to starve to death, so he felt obligated to butcher and eat Shannon. He ate as much as he could in preparation for the remaining leg of his journey, and then he packed away some of the strips of flesh.
Okay.
He said not long after that, he came to the crest of a hill, and he saw at long last the Los Pinos Indian Agency. He threw the remaining strips of Shannon Bell's flesh away, presuming that an animal would eat them.
Oh.
He did confess to the police that he had grown quite fond of the taste of human flesh.
Ooh.
And found the portion around the chest to be most delicious. I don't know why you would add that in there, dude.
No.
Now you just sound a little crazy.
The boobies taste good.
Basically. That was his first confession. It is written down, so it was recorded. But then he would recant that and say, no, that's not exactly how it happened. He would go back and forth. At some point, he said that they boiled and ate their own shoes on the path.
Why would you eat shoes?
I guess because of leather.
Okay.
He also told the story that he left the camp. I guess he told that in the first one. It was always he was just the innocent bystander.
Sure.
Essentially.
Yeah.
So he was put into the best they had of a jail, which was really just a cabin with a guy standing at the door. And while they continued to work through if this guy was guilty, what story was true. And while all of that was happening, it became summertime. So it's August now. A man named John Randolph, who was an illustrator who worked for Harper's Weekly magazine, came upon a site.
Oh, no.
He discovered 5 bodies at the foot of Slumgullen Pass.
Altogether? Oh.
They were at the Lake Fork of the Gunnison River, now known as Dead Man's Gulch. And it matched the description of where Alfred said he originally had it out with Shannon Bell. So it was pretty close to Los Pinos. So that means that all 6 of the men had made it to that lake that he claimed only he and Shannon were at.
Whoa.
What is really tragic about this whole thing is that they were really close to Los Pinos at this point.
Yeah. But they didn't know.
They didn't, because they had Alferd Packer as their guide and he didn't know.
Yeah.
He had no idea where he was. So they sent out the local coroner and law enforcement to the site with about 20 volunteers, and they found all 5 of these men. They were still in various states of decomposition because of the snow. So part of them had been preserved. Some had been eaten by animals. You know, it had been 4 months.
Yeah.
First responders to the site noted that it appeared that extreme violence had happened. Frank Miller's head was missing entirely from the campsite.
Yikes.
Israel Swan and another man had been reduced mostly to bones by the animals, but they could tell in Israel's skull that there was a jagged chunk missing out of it.
An axe.
Yes. And it was presumed that Frank Miller's head was missing because it was probably dragged off by animals.
How does he take all of them at the same time?
That's a really good question. He's going to have another story. Don't worry. He has a lot of stories.
Did he drug them with something? Tell me right now.
I can't remember. There's literally, I'm not even telling. I think he changed his story about 25 times over the course of his life. Okay. The real story is probably never known, but I will tell you what I think happened at the end. So the bodies of George Noon and James Humphrey were mostly just torsos, but they still had their heads and bearded faces intact, and they could tell that they had also been hit in the head with what they presume was a hatchet.
Okay.
Their bodies also had noticeable broken bones. They were able to somehow ascertain that Shannon Bell, which was the one he said he had this big skirmish with at the end, had died last because of the way his body was decaying.
So he gave the right order.
Yes.
Just not the right story.
And Bell's body was not found with a hatchet blow, but rather a bullet to his head. So it was slightly different than the rest.
Okay.
He also had a gunshot through his pelvis.
Oh.
The state of the bodies immediately contradicted Alfred's version of what happened. They were all together in one spot, not scattered across miles. Most of the bodies still had large portions of remaining flesh, muscle, organs that could have been consumed if they were actually all eating each other, like they said, long before Shannon Bell had died. So the story that he told obviously was not making sense. All of the men were also found with tattered rags tied to their feet. So the story about them eating their shoes was probably true.
Okay.
Alfred may have known they were close to Los Pinos.
Maybe
he saw this as his chance to get a lot of money and take what they had.
He had a lot of money on him, yeah.
And that was the theory. After evaluating the campsite, Alfred killed the men before all of the supplies completely ran out. He robbed them of their possessions and was planning to run to Los Pinos, but he got snowed in. And then he had to live there in his makeshift shelter for months. And that's when he started eating the men. So they don't think like cannibalism was ever really
his goal,
a plan.
Right.
His plan was just to kill the men, take the money, end up at Los Pinos, tell some story about them getting lost, and skip back to Pennsylvania.
Right.
But the weather had another thing in mind. So he was thrown in jail and a trial was scheduled. The townspeople started kind of coming for Alfred. This was a sick story.
Yeah.
And they were pissed that this guy had taken advantage of all these other men. But for whatever reason, I don't know if he paid somebody off, he just disappeared.
Oh.
He just went missing from this jail, if you want to call it that. There is thought that one of the deputies just slipped him the keys and told him to get out of town. And he would elude the authorities for 8 years.
Oh, wow. So he was found.
He was eventually apprehended in Wyoming, and he was brought back to Lake City for the trial. He was eventually found guilty of 5 counts of manslaughter and sentenced to 40 years in prison, but he was actually set free on parole after 16.
Interesting. They weren't into hanging back then? People are killed for less.
I don't know. They didn't give him the death sentence.
Weird.
During the trial, it was really hard to even understand because while he was on the stand, his story changed multiple times. It was a very sensationalized story at the time. It's not often that you hear about someone eating their companions.
Yeah.
But also cannibalism was not considered a crime.
Oh.
So they couldn't really bring him up on any charges for that specifically. People were wanting him to get the death sentence because they felt like it was even more grisly that he not only killed the men, but ate pieces of them.
Yeah.
So Alferd Packer served his 16 years and then he died in April of 1907 at the age of 65, living in Deer Creek, which is in Jefferson County, Colorado. The cause of his death was cited as dementia, trouble, and worry, although his clinical cause of death has been described as the result of a stroke. Alfred is widely rumored to have become a vegetarian before his death.
Okay.
And there are those out there who believe the fact that he had eaten human flesh led to his dementia and many mental troubles that he dealt with throughout his life. We also know he had epilepsy, so I don't know if that, has effects on your brain as well. He was reported to be a pretty decent guy in the last part of his life.
He found God.
Maybe.
And felt bad, so he decided decided that he wouldn't even kill an animal to eat it.
He could have been traumatized from eating the people. I don't think that was, like I said, his goal. I don't think he was into eating flesh. It was just kind of a have to survive. After he killed them, though, he had not been a murderer before. So
well, maybe eating a human being, you take on part of their soul.
So maybe they did.
Maybe they haunt him, or they haunted him, you know, or something was happening to him after he did that, because you're cursed for eating another human being.
Maybe. In 1999, there was a man named David Bailey. He was the curator of the museums of Western Colorado, and he was given a collection of pistols and rifles that were once the property of famous and infamous figures from the Wild West of Colorado. And he found one Colt pistol that was in very poor condition, and there was a note attached to it that said, "This gun was found at the site where Alferd Packer killed and ate his companions."
Oh.
Him being a curator, he began researching this infamous incident and the records connected to this gun. And he came across an article written in the Denver Post in 1906, which had a confession from Alferd Packer on his deathbed.
Oh.
And this was his final account of what really happened in the mountains. And many people believe this is the truth because it's a deathbed confession.
Well, let's hope it is.
Yes. So he said he had gone out, and when he came back to the campground, Shannon Bell had killed all 4 men in the party.
Oh.
They were all laying around the fire, 4 of them dead on their backs. Shannon Bell was a huge man. He was the strongest in the party, and he had killed the 4 men with a hatchet. And he said as soon as he walked into the camp, Shannon Bell came running at him with that hatchet.
Oh.
He said that it seemed like Shannon had gone mad. They had been trapped in this area for a while, snowed in, and he thinks something just snapped in Shannon. He ran back to escape Shannon Bell. He had the Colt revolver on him. As he came running, Shannon tripped over a snowdrift, and he had his moment. He pulled out the gun. As Shannon got up out of the deep snow, he fired his gun at him.
Okay.
Alfred claimed that he shot at him twice, and eventually Shannon Bell fell down. This does match when you look at where the bullet wound was. It was in the pelvis. So they think that makes sense of how he would have been coming up a snowdrift and where Alfred was.
Yeah.
There was evidence somehow from this pistol. They could tell it had been shot. And at the scene of the crime, they had recovered bullets. So this matched. He then said after he shot him in the pelvis, it made Shannon fall down. And at that point, he shot him in the head.
Okay.
Because he felt like he was in fear of his life.
Yeah, well, he just murdered 4 people.
Nobody knows for sure if that's the truth or if Alfred killed all of them. But I think, to me, this makes the most sense because Alfred wasn't that big of a guy. To take on 5 other men, knowing that Shannon Bell was so much larger than Alfred.
And with a hatchet.
Alfred wasn't like Mr. Hatchet wielding. They were all tired. They were all starving. To me, this kind of sounds like the likely story.
Yeah.
Now the question is, why did he make up all the other ones?
Because he was crazy?
I think he was a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that is the story of the Colorado Cannibal. When I started researching it, I originally thought it was going to be some like serial killer, but it's really just a story of men who got lost out in the crazy wilderness of Colorado. They were a little too ambitious, thinking that they could make it through a snowstorm, and they got trapped. Somebody snapped. I think it's most likely Shannon Bell snapped.
Yeah.
And maybe Alfred, when he showed up in the camp, was just so traumatized.
Yeah. Or like we said, he ate brains.
Or he was afraid to tell what really happened because he thought he would be accused.
Well, yeah, he would be accused, and he probably was dealing with some guilt over eating human beings. That's probably why he was okay with doing the time and changing his lifestyle when he came out. Yeah. Because he had to amend.
It was said, you know, he was a decent man later in his life. He became a vegetarian after leaving prison. It also said he was very charitable. He gave a lot of money away.
Well, so he probably had to be that way too, just for people to even want to be around him.
True.
I wouldn't want to be friends with a dude that ate 5 people. So...
And I didn't see anything. I don't think he was ever married. He never had children. He was just kind of that guy.
Yeah, he was that guy, you know, and as long as he was doing good things, then people tolerated his presence.
And like I said earlier on, he has been used in a lot of lore, and there are several, not just the University of Colorado restaurant, but apparently there's been some others around the country.
Okay.
that's like tongue-in-cheek Alferd Packer, which I think is kind of in pretty poor taste. But
it is.
I looked it up, and University of Colorado, their food court still has the Packer Grill.
Interesting.
And it has some like, I didn't even write it
just
down.
Like weird food names.
It has some weird slogan like the best of all mankind or something.
Oh. Okay.
It's pretty fucked up.
Well, what would be even more fucked up is if someone looked into that place and they actually do have human remains being served.
I know the Donner Party is another big thing that comes out here in Colorado. It was probably more common than we want to think about. When you're in a survival mode.
And, with some Native American tribes, they ate each other.
The Giants, right?
And the Giants.
The Giants episode. Yep. That's my story. Colorado Cannibal. It caught my attention, a year ago when we started this. So
I never heard of the story.
Me neither.
That's crazy. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So y'all get to continue to hear from me because now I'm going to read our next lab report story.
Yeah, we weren't sure how to go about it. Usually we do lab report, mini episode, lab report, mini episode, or we go back and forth. But because we're both writing mini episodes now, we didn't really know how to go about it.
We're still figuring it out, like we say, every single lab report.
Yes. Just enjoy Kendra more.
So I have an email that came in, and it's called A Hillbilly Haunting.
Oh.
Hey there, Jessica and Kendra.
Well, hello.
Thank you for giving us listeners a place to share our stories.
Yep.
I have one for you that I hope you will read on a future episode of Lab Reports.
Right. Meow.
Here you are. My story begins back in the good old 1990s.
Yay, I love that whole decade.
That's kind of where our story begins, too.
Yeah.
That's when I really remember my life, is the 90s.
Yep.
I was around the age of 9 when my parents decided it was time to leave the big city of Atlanta, Georgia, and move to somewhere a little quieter. My older brother was headed into middle school, and they thought a small town school would be the better option as we got older. Little did they know how much being a new kid in a small town school really sucks for the kids.
I can only imagine.
But parents, we're just doing our best.
That or you're Bella Swan and everybody wants you.
That's true. But we had no choice, and so we moved into a suburb northwest of Atlanta that has a reputation for being a little, how do I say, hickish? Backwards. Hillbilly. Take your pick. I will remain silent on the actual name of the town. Don't need any of those types tracking me down for bad-mouthing their hometown. So let's just say it was quite an adjustment after living in Atlanta most of our lives to now be in Mayberry Town.
Okay.
The one good thing for us was that we got a much larger house and it was out in the country, much different than our cramped 1950s style 2-bedroom home in Atlanta.
Yeah.
My brother and I had been sharing a room for all of our lives, so I was excited about having my own space and had grand ideas of all the posters I wanted to hang on my wall and was begging my parents to let me paint my room. It would have been one of the hideous neon colors from the 90s that would have absolutely tanked the resale value of the home. As a parent now, I completely understand why my mom and dad told me to wait a few years. Your judgment at 9 years old is probably not the best for interior decorating.
Bright lime green.
What would your daughter want to paint her room?
Probably blue.
I remember my oldest loved the color orange. And so if I had let them paint, it would have been a bright orange.
Mine was always red growing up. Red's not my favorite color, but I love red on walls.
Red looks good on walls.
Yeah.
I would have wanted like a light lavender color in my room, but I never got to paint my room.
I think my sister painted it black once.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I just moved back into my own house and I told my kiddo to paint the room whatever.
Do whatever you want.
Yeah.
I would totally go to town just drawing my own mural.
That's what my kid is doing,
years.
Actually, because, I have artistes as children.
That's cool.
The little light switch, my kiddo took that off and painted little cats all over it.
Oh,
They're
cute.
so cute. I'll have to show it to you next time you come over. Back to Georgia. So the house we moved into, it was an old 2-story farmhouse with a little white picket fence. Probably the type of place my mom had dreamed of living in since she was a little girl.
Yeah.
We were right near a river and there was a small pond on the property, which was spread out on about 2 acres.
Wow.
This sounds nice. I would move to a hick town for this.
For the river and everything, yeah.
The house definitely needed some work, and my parents picked it up for a song back in those days.
A song?
A song.
What's a song?
Like picked it up for a song?
I've never heard of that.
It's like a saying. I've heard it a couple of times. I think it's a Southern saying.
But like a song, like singing a song?
Yeah. So when you say, I got this for a song, it means you got it really cheap.
Oh.
Like all I had to do was sing a song and they gave it to me.
Oh. Huh, okay.
So they got a really cheap house. That's really nice. No AC, no central heat, in need of updated appliances, plumbing, electric wire, the works.
The no AC would kill me.
Yeah.
I know a lot of places still don't have AC. They have to do like the window stuff. And
yeah, you have to get like the little...
I can't live like
individual units.
How did people live back then at all?
I don't know. Especially, it gets hot. In Georgia.
I don't think I could.
I've never been to this part of Georgia, but I think it's pretty hot. I don't know.
Well, my mom...
I've been to Atlanta, but...
My mom would say, I know it's super humid because my mom said she would get ready for church, get all done up, and she would drive like 2 streets and everything would be melted off her face and her hair wouldn't have curls anymore.
That's how I felt living in Houston, Texas. I'm like, I just showered and now I feel like I need another shower.
Gross.
My dad worked as a construction manager in the Atlanta area and had quite a bit of experience in the area of remodeling and, of course, all the connections we could need. It was a labor of love for him and my mom, a dream they had wanted to fulfill for a while. We were like the perfect little American family. Mom, dad, 2 kids, and a white picket fence. All we needed now was a dog. Of course, I promptly began begging for a pet within the first day of moving there. Me and my brother had both wanted a dog for a while, and our parents had always said our space was too small for an animal. Now, with that excuse gone, we began the calculated convincing of our parents to get us a pet.
Yeah.
We did get one, a black Labrador that came to us through happenstance, or maybe it was fate. One day while going to the local Walmart, there was a truck sitting out at the end of the parking lot with a sign on it saying, "Free puppies."
Oh, man.
We brought home what would become my best friend that day. We named him Arlo, and he was by my side through all the events I would witness in our new home.
Arlo.
One day, my brother and I were out playing with our G.I. Joes near the pond at our new house. Arlo was there with us laying down and watching the silly boys set up the elaborate camps for Joes versus Cobra. This takes me back. Did you ever watch the G.I. Joe cartoons?
Yeah.
My brother was into those. Our mom was in the house doing what moms do, and dad was off to work. It was midsummer, and we were having the time of our lives. My older brother said he was too old to play with G.I. Joes, but he was only 11. We were mid-battle, Joes versus Cobra. And all of a sudden, Arlo started whining and acting kind of agitated.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side of the small pond were a few decent-sized pecan trees, and he seemed to just be staring in that direction.
It's a skinwalker.
I know, right? Is this another werewolf? My brother and I looked over there and we didn't see anything. No birds, no squirrels, nothing like that. These trees weren't a thick grove, so we could see easily if there had been something there. And then the craziest thing happened. This pecan came flying out of the area where the trees were, just as if someone would have been standing there on the shore of the pond, casting a pebble into the water.
All of a sudden, I thought you meant like a bird. I'm like, wait.
Like a pelican?
What's a pecan? Are you saying this wrong? Why is it flying? I pictured a tree. But all of a sudden, you said it's flying. I'm like, wait a second. What bird is this?
So a pecan, do you know? Like a big pecan. We're educating Jessica today. Thank you, Atlanta writer.
I know what a pecan is. I eat pecans all the time, but the flying threw me. Okay.
So pecan came flying out of the grove, like somebody threw it.
Okay.
It landed in the middle of the pond, and then my dog started going hella crazy. My brother and I stopped what we were doing, and we looked over in the trees. Who was there?
A fairy.
If someone had been there, we should have seen them or heard them, but we saw nothing. And then unbelievably, another pecan whizzed out of seemingly nowhere and landed in the pond.
Someone doesn't want you there.
I would think somebody was fucking with me. That was enough for me and my brother, and Arlo seemed really ready to leave the area, so we ran inside to tell our mom, leaving our G.I. Joe trucks, tanks, and jets just sitting by the pond. This was the first strange occurrence I remember happening, but it would not be the last. We ended up staying in the old farmhouse for about 3 years, and during that time, I have many tales to tell. I know you have limited time, and I want to make sure my story is told, so I will narrow it down to a few other instances that almost made me pee my pants.
Okay.
By the time we would leave the home, my entire family was convinced that ghosts are real and there are things in the world that we just cannot explain.
Mm-hmm.
Another instance, I recall playing hide and seek with my brother outside one time and finding a spot tucked away on the front wraparound porch.
It was on one.
I know. I'm like envisioning this right now, and I'm like, I mean, I could live with a ghost.
Yeah, why not? I'll even leave a plate for you.
It was a hot summer day, and I was tucked away, hiding and hoping to stay hidden from my brother.
Mm-hmm.
I began to feel something that can only be described as that feeling of dread.
Oh, no.
I heard footsteps coming towards me on the porch and assumed it was my brother, so I held my breath. Thought he was about to find me, but then I realized the step sounded much heavier than that of my 12-year-old brother.
Ugh.
It was more like a heavy work boot sound, scuffing at a very slow gait.
No.
Definitely not my brother. And my dad was at work, and even my dad didn't walk like that.
Yeah. Sounds terrifying right now.
And then I heard a whistle.
Ooh.
It was a slow tune that I did not recognize.
Why am I just picturing Candyman right now?
Dragging. No one in my house would be described as a whistler. Is that even something?
A whistler?
A whistler? He put it in parentheses. Is that even something? A whistler.
Yes,
I think it is.
Yeah.
As the footsteps...
A person who whistles.
He's a whistler. As the footsteps began to draw nearer, I felt a cold come over me. The temperature seemed to drop significantly, as if someone was blasting the AC right on me.
Just what you needed.
Maybe. The footsteps and the whistling stopped, and I felt a presence just in front of where I was hiding.
Ooh.
I would have sworn that some nearby neighbor had come onto the porch and joined our hide-and-seek game. I peeked out from my spot where I had a clear view of anyone coming or going, and there was definitely nothing there. Just the feeling that I was not alone on that porch.
Creepy.
And then I heard my brother off in the distance, definitely nowhere near where I was hiding on the porch, and he was calling my name. The cold spot dissipated, and it felt like the normal Georgia summer heat again. At that point, I didn't care about the game anymore, and I went running out to find my brother and tell him what had just happened. When I shared my encounter, his face went white. He told me that while he had been out looking for me in the shed area away from the house, he had also heard a strange whistling and felt like someone had been nearby.
Ooh.
Arlo,
like
I don't either. Arlo had been running alongside my brother while playing the hide-and-seek game. Arlo started acting weird again, similar to the day at that lake, looking at things that weren't there and growling. At this point, we were convinced. Our house was definitely haunted by some whistling, pecan-throwing Georgia hillbilly.
Oh, no.
We jokingly nicknamed him Bubba, and it kind of became an inside family joke whenever something weird would happen, like hearing footsteps upstairs while everyone who lived in the house was downstairs. Just one other story I want to share. I remember being home alone with just me and Arlo. I was almost 12 at this point, and I was taking a shower after baseball practice. My dad was at work, and my mom had dropped me off and was out to take my brother to his baseball team's practice. Arlo, he's one of those dogs who just wants to be right next to you, so he was laying outside the bathroom door waiting for me to finish my shower. I like dogs like that. I mean, I would let my dog in the shower with me.
That's what my cat does. If I ever close the door, she's like, "Meow, where are you going?"
I have pictures of my cat last night. I took a bath, and he just like sat there on the corner watching me. I thought he was going to jump in the bath with me.
She just meows outside of my shower.
I love that. That's what I want in a pet. I call them Velcro. About 2 minutes into my shower, someone knocked on the bathroom door.
Ooh.
I thought it was odd. No one should be home to disturb me right now, but I thought perhaps my brother or mom had forgotten something and came back in the house. So I yelled back and said, "What?" But no one answered. I peeked my head around the shower curtain to hear better past the water, and that is when I heard growling coming from Arlo.
No.
And I saw the doorknob begin to jiggle like someone was about to come inside the bathroom.
No.
And so then again I yelled. I said, "Hey, I'm in the shower." Then the knob started turning crazily back and forth, but no one came into the bathroom. Arlo was growling, and I was now terrified. I turned off the shower and grabbed my towel, and I said, "Stay out," firmly.
Then now you have to stay in.
But you're stuck in the bathroom. By this point, I heard Arlo's growling turn more into a whining noise. Okay, I'd be freaked the fuck out.
No, I hate when that happens in movies.
He was scared too.
Yeah.
Just as fast as it had started, the doorknob stopped turning. I slowly approached the door and opened it. I looked out in the hallway to see Arlo sitting there. I yelled down into the house for my mom, brother, or even my dad, who was never really home. But no one was there. It was just me and apparently Bubba.
Bubba scares me. He's reminding me of seriously, like the Candyman or It. I don't like this
What is
ghost.
he doing? Yeah.
He doesn't seem like he's fun, pecan throwing, giggly Bubba, whatever he is. He's scary.
Interesting you say that, because the next line says, "Fortunately for all of us involved, Bubba didn't seem to be a mean ghost."
Oh.
I think perhaps he was just living his life in the house thinking he was still alive. Maybe Bubba was like the couple in Beetlejuice.
Oh.
At least that's how my young mind chose to think of it, so I wasn't afraid all the time. We coexisted with our hillbilly ghost for the 3 years we were there. He did his thing and we did ours.
Maybe in the beginning it was like that. He was trying to scare them.
And then he's like, oh, they're not scared.
They're just kids. Oh, well.
They called me Bubba. I guess we're friends now. While it did scare the bejesus out of me sometimes, I realized no harm was coming our way and made for some good stories to tell my friends.
Okay.
I became the kid that had the house friends wanted to spend the night at.
Really interesting.
Maybe Bubba even helped my little social life.
Oh.
So that's my story to share. Not all ghosts are bad, although they can be inconvenient and a little scary sometimes. I believe most spirits are simply lost on the other side and don't always mean to cause us harm. I also believe I am sensitive to spirits, just as Jessica mentions on your show quite often.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what about your dog? It bothers me that the dog
was whining and growling.
Yeah. Anyway.
Maybe Bubba likes people, but not animals. Maybe he's just a grumpy old guy that's like, get out of the way, dog.
You threw a pecan at me. It's reminding me of like a movie too, of like the new kid that comes to the town and then they are like, you live in so-and-so's house.
Nobody lives there. I feel like everywhere I have lived since the Bubba incident has involved some extra friends from the spiritual realm. I embrace it now and try to find purpose in the reason I am chosen to hear from those who have crossed over.
Yeah.
Keep those stories coming, ladies. I look forward to hearing your new topics every week and your opinions on the stories you research. Thank you for carving out the time in your busy lives to bring Lucid Lab.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
And we love that you appreciate our opinions because you kind of have to have a little bit of an ego sitting here and thinking that people actually want to hear what people actually have to say.
I think after doing this for a year, we have definitely like loosened up about it. And we're like, this is just who we are.
Yeah, it doesn't matter anymore. Like nothing affects us that much.
Yeah. We don't ever want to offend anyone. But no. It's also very hard to have an opinion of any kind that won't offend someone.
It's true.
So,
yeah. And I don't know. But there's a lot to learn in life. Look, I didn't know crap about Georgia. So.
No. Yeah, you didn't know that you can buy something for a song.
Yeah.
Or off mic, you hadn't heard Mayberry before.
No, I hadn't heard Mayberry either.
Yeah. I feel like I heard that some in Texas.
We're just separated, and
we're all learning, and yeah, that's what we're here to do. I feel like I learn something every single week.
Well, yeah, we're researching and digging into different areas, different people, different cultures. It's interesting, but that's why we love it.
It's enriching my life because I'm learning things that I would not have if we weren't doing this podcast, and that's what we hope to bring to you guys too.
Thank you for your story. Do we have a name for this writer from Georgia?
It's just signed Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben. We love hearing from male listeners.
It's been good, Ben. Alrighty, so I have the last story here, and it is my mini episode.
Woo-woo.
Have you ever heard of Giulia Tofana?
No.
Okay, cool. I don't want to give it away this very second if anybody else has, but I've wanted to cover her for a while. And it's just one of those stories, again, not enough information to do a whole episode.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought this was my perfect opportunity to talk about her.
Let's do it.
Giulia Tofana was born in the 17th century.
Okay.
We do not have a birth date for her, but we have some theories as to when she died, which we'll get into. We don't know much about her life up until a certain point in time, but there are some theories there as well.
Okay.
She was thought to be born in Palermo, Italy. But before going any further, I actually want to talk about life in Italy at the time because it might explain things later.
Very mysterious so
Why
far.
Giulia ended up doing what she did.
What did she do? You don't want to give it away.
And not to you. Other people might know. At the time, Italy was a deeply religious, patriarchal society.
I think it kind of still is today.
It is with a modern twist.
Right.
Although certainly not perfect by any means, women today have a much more visible role outside of the home and have fought for hundreds of years.
Good for them.
Above all, Italian society views women in the role of mother and housekeeper. Like here, the feminist movement in the 1960s and 70s brought many changes. One of the biggest changes in Italy was the legalization of divorce.
Mm-hmm.
Women in Italy were not allowed to divorce until 1970.
Or ladies.
Still today, the process is lengthy and requires a period of separation before divorce will be granted.
So don't get married in Italy.
No. It used to take 3 years. Then it was brought down to 1.5 years, I believe. And just in 2016, it was shortened to 6 months.
Wow.
And it wasn't until 1975 that women were given equal rights within a marriage. Prior to this, men had legal dominance in the marriage. Small tokens of equality were given to women over time, but the Codis de Familia, or family code in the 19th century, women had very few rights.
I had no idea. This is sad.
I know. They were bound to their homes. They could not be guardians of their own children. If they had a job and were married, their earnings legally belonged to their husbands.
Oh, I'm getting enraged right now just sitting here listening.
To spend any of their earnings, women needed their husband's legal consent. Separation required their husband's authorization.
Wow.
If wives cheated on their husbands, they could end up in jail. But if a man cheated on his wife, he wasn't legally punished unless he actually went to live with his lover. The entire system became this giant breeding ground for violence against women. In southern Italy, up until the 1970s, women who were raped were expected or forced to marry the rapist.
I mean, it's a violent man's dream over there. I'm getting so scared listening to this because I feel like this is where the U.S. is headed.
I know. Violence against women in Italy is high. Femicide is high. And this is why we choose the bear.
Always. I want to cuddle with the bear.
I know, seriously. Femicide is a cultural phenomenon with deep roots that go back millennia, thanks to the misogynist and rape culture of Rome, fascism, and Catholicism with its whole Madonna whore complex.
Yeah.
Up until 1981, there was the concept of honor killing. It was present in the legal system, and it's throughout Europe, I believe. Italian law allowed for lighter sentences where someone caused the death of a spouse, daughter, or sister upon discovering them in illegitimate carnal relations. And in the heat of passion, due to an offense to their honor or that of their family, they killed that person.
Okay.
And even though the law was changed towards eliminating this acceptance, many judges have been accused in recent times of resurrecting this in their light sentencing of men who kill their spouses or other female family members.
It's just, ingrained in their culture.
Yeah.
That's so fucked up.
With as recent of statistics I could find, around 12,000 women reported stalking in 2019. 9 in 10 victims of sexual abuse are women. 60% of women who were murdered by their current partner or ex-partner. From 2000 to 2012, it accounted for 75% of murders.
That's probably standard across the world.
Well, it changes year to year. I think it's just more prevalent.
I just know the one closest to you is almost always who murders you. One of our most important decisions as a woman is who we choose to partner with.
And although sexual violence reporting has increased over the years, it is believed that 90% go unreported because women don't feel safe.
Yeah.
Or won't be believed.
And nothing's going to happen to their oppressor anyways.
Yeah. So just keep that all in mind.
Okay.
And imagine that being 10 times worse when we talk about Giulia Tofana, because at the time she was living, women's rights were nothing. So there's no wonder why women started taking matters into their own hands at some point.
Why would you not?
Giulia was the maker of dreams back then because divorce from abusive husbands at the time was a distant dream. She is thought to be responsible for the murder of 600 men.
What? So she's my new hero.
Yeah.
No, okay.
Not by her own hands, but by providing something secretive that other women could use to rid themselves of the lives that they did not want.
Oh my gosh.
She had some male customers, but for the most part, it was women in desperate situations. And her method of murder was makeup and holy water.
Wow.
AKA poison.
I love this woman. Do we need to put like a shrine to her?
But it didn't start with Giulia. Poison as a method of murder was prevalent in Italian high society. For example, Lucrezia Borgia, over 200 years before in the late 1400s, her father, Rodrigo, became Pope Alexander VI. The sudden shot to fame, if you want to call it that, brought a lot of worry to Lucrezia. She claimed that someone was out to poison her second husband, Alfonso of Aragon. Not sure what happened to her first husband. I didn't look into it.
Have you watched The Borgias?
I don't think so.
It has Lucrezia in it.
Oh, does it?
It's a show.
Oh.
I watched it after Game of Thrones years and years ago, but it's a good one.
Okay. So you might know what I'm saying here.
I recognize some of the names, but I watched it so long ago, I don't remember. But I remember the Pope thing.
Well, I saw a painting of this Alfonso guy. There's no photos back then.
Yeah.
But he was like a child.
No.
He was like 18 or 19 years old.
Yeah, they were all young.
Anyway, Lucrezia, who was around the same age at the time, I think a year older, insisted on making Alfonso's food for him because she didn't trust anyone. The kid was thought to be the murder plot of Lucrezia's brother, Cesar, who didn't like the kid or the arrangement between the two houses or the fact that Alfonso was the illegitimate son of the King of Naples and his mistress, or the fact that at some point during the marriage, Rome decided to side with France and invade Naples. Tons of scandal. Kendra said off mic that brother and sister had it on for each other.
They did.
There's part of the story I don't know.
I remember that in the show, and it's in the very first episode, so I'm not giving anything away. There's a little sexual tension for brother and sister.
That's why he didn't like Alfonso.
Probably.
But Lucrezia was pregnant at the time, so there was hesitancy until Alfonso's suspicious death in August of 1900. He was attacked by hired killers the month before and seriously injured and was being cared for before men creeped into his room and strangled him to death. Whoa. So why does this matter? This isn't poison, right? Well, people blamed Lucrezia. Mm-hmm. She made his food, and she was rumored to have poisoned him via a ring. And that's actually what the Marvel comic character Sienna is based off of.
Okay.
But the rumor lasted for hundreds of years, and it inspired other women to kill by poisoning.
Do it.
They felt that that was their only way out.
It's so sad to feel like that's the only thing you can do is kill someone.
Yeah.
To have a normal life.
And sadly, it was true. Because they had full control.
Yeah, what else could they do? Did they make them remarry, though, if their husband died?
That depended on your status and what was left for you, maybe. You had to be able to take care of yourself.
As I say, you can't work as a woman.
Giulia, as I said, almost nothing is known about her early life, but many believe she is the daughter of Tofana d'Adamo. Back in the day, way back, it was common practice to take your mother's first name as your last name.
Okay.
Which would be an interesting way to carry on your own family lineage, since it is expected to take the man's last name in marriage. So if this is her mother, then she just followed in her mother's footsteps because Tofana d'Adamo was executed on July 12, 1633 for poisoning her husband with an arsenic concoction of her own invention.
So like mother, like daughter.
Yeah. Not just that, but for illegally trafficking this and other lethal poisons. Before her, another woman was executed for the same thing. This was Francesca Lasarda. Tofana and Francesca were accused of selling this poison in Palermo, Italy. What Giulia later uses was believed to have been created by Tofana and is believed to be named after her.
Okay.
Which makes sense if the shoe fits.
Mm-hmm.
It is believed that Giulia fled to Rome after her mother was executed and decided to carry on her legacy.
It's a tough job, but someone's got to do it.
There is a source that claims to have debunked that, though, saying that Giulia's actual name before was Giulia Mangiardi, and she left for Rome in 1624, which would have been 9 years before Tofana was executed.
Okay.
She may have not been her mother, but Giulia may have been Tofana's, disciple. Mm-hmm. Encouraged to branch out on her own. That or Giulia was simply an admirer of Tofana's work and set up shop for herself in honor of her. Once in Rome, Giulia was said to have spent a lot of time with apothecaries. She was kind of a Jack Parsons of her time, but with cosmetics.
But with not explosives.
Back then, they didn't know that most of the ingredients used to make beauty products were toxic and downright lethal, depending on the quantity. Ingredients in her poisonous concoction included arsenic, lead, and belladonna, also known as deadly nightshade.
Okay.
Dang it, I love me some practical magic. Oh, by the way, I was super disappointed. I think it was either in one of our first episodes.
Okay.
We brought up practical magic, didn't we?
I know we did.
Yeah. I know we did an Instagram post or whatever about practical magic too. I found out that was a rumor.
It never happened.
It's not happening.
Oh.
I mean, it could still happen, but people are saying if it's based on the books, then it would actually happen at the 30-year anniversary, not now.
Okay.
So it's still a possibility. Those women are still kicking in.
The
beautiful.
Women are, I know, they look amazing, all of them, for their age.
Yeah.
Like,
totally.
I think that they've actually done some magic to retain their youth.
So it may still happen. Anyway, if you don't know what these ingredients are and why they would be in skincare or makeup, I'll explain. Before the Victorian era, arsenic was used in beauty products. It was used for skin lightening for a really long time before people realized that it was linked to kidney damage, nervous system damage, hair loss, vitiligo, and death.
Yeah.
This goes back to the same crap that we saw in the Waverly Hills episode. Absolutely.
Right.
Just that same need to look deathly, like you're
They
about
want
to
it to
die.
be pale.
Yeah, very
these
pale.
days. Yeah.
Ammonia was used to wash your face.
Oh, that's smart.
Lead was used to powder your nose. All sorts of deadly things were used by women in beauty rituals back then.
What are we going to find out's in our makeup today?
I know, probably really bad stuff that we haven't linked yet.
That's what I'm saying.
They probably have linked it, but they want to keep us sick anyway. So
True. It's a big money maker.
have you heard recently that the new mammogram is actually causing the cancer?
Really?
It's like 10 times the amount of radiation to have the mammogram than anything else now.
I know like CT scans, and I don't know if it's the same technology, but I've heard that about CT scans that you don't want to do it unless you already know something's in there.
I've had so many in my life.
It's like 100 times
I know.
or something crazy.
I've been sick a lot throughout my life. They used to have to hold off on giving me another one because I had them too often.
Yeah, that's scary.
I know. Maybe that's where all my problems are from. But it all started because I had problems. So
I know.
I don't know.
And you have to figure it out, and that's the only way.
Yeah.
Unless you get an MRI, which costs 3 times as much, and insurance doesn't cover it.
I just want an alien to come down, scoop me up, and say, "You poor
And
little
fix you."
human," and they're gonna take me back up to their ship, put me in a tub of goo, and then fix me.
Maybe it
and
will
drop
be
me back off.
like Elizabeth Clarer's man.
No, but I don't want to have sex.
Make sweet, sweet love to you.
I just want a tub of goo. The next thing that was used isn't deadly, but interesting. The cochineal insect was harvested for its pigment, still is, still
I've heard of
today.
that, yeah.
I think even Starbucks had to stop using it not too long ago when people found out. It's considered to be safe, but I guess that's what they use to color their strawberry and cream frappuccinos.
I was going to say it's in red, like one of the red dyes that everybody says is bad.
It's any range, red, purpley, pink, anything like that. If you see it listed, it's a bug, and it could also be labeled as Crimson Lake, Carmine, or CI 75470.
I've seen Carmine.
It's sad though because it takes 70,000 dried female cochineals to make just 1 pound of the dye.
Where do these bugs even come from?
I don't know. They must breed them.
That's sad.
I know. Just females though.
And to
That's
be
a
bred
lot.
just to be killed.
Yeah.
For us to have a colorful drink. Who fucking cares if it's colorful?
Anyway, that's been used for a really long time. Belladonna, though, was an interesting one. I didn't know this. This is what women used to drop into their eyes.
And it's poisonous?
It's poisonous. Yes, it kills. But they would do this to dilate their eyes and make them look like more doll-like.
So it just dilates, like makes them really big?
Yeah.
So you look like an anime character?
They think that you would look more seductive.
Why
which,
is it
Which
women,
they do.
Yeah.
You know, that's what kids do in filters on social media and stuff.
I know. And it really fucks with me that we're all trying to make
Look
ourselves
not
look
real.
Yeah, like dolls.
Yeah, like dolls.
Because then we're treated as not human beings.
Right,
So
exactly.
it's dangerous.
Belladonna in Italian translates to beautiful woman.
Yeah.
So this mixture of Giulia's was quite ingenious, though, because they were everyday items that anyone could get their hands on and that women were known to have for themselves. But Giulia was only a supplier. It is believed that she never actually poisoned anyone herself, other than maybe getting started by poisoning her own first husband or something like that.
Okay.
But how were so many women able to get away with this? Well, it was brilliant marketing and packaging. At some point, she started her own makeup business. And started offering her poisonous creation to women, and she called it Aqua Tofana.
Okay.
Possibly after her mother. It was an odorless and colorless poison that could kill someone in as little as 4 drops.
Wow.
As Aqua Tofana, it was sold as a powder makeup. In liquid form, it was sold in a beautiful bottle with the Mana of St. Nicholas of Bari label. Remember the Santa and Krampus episode?
Yeah.
It was sold like that. You know, the little bottle of oil, his secretion, remember, of his bones.
Yeah, that was disgusting.
And
but
that is.
Here's my thought, though, is if it is marketed and it looks beautiful, were there women buying it accidentally thinking it was makeup?
No, because you could only get it from her.
So she was very clear.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good.
But with the whole, you know, St. Nicholas of Bari, I don't know, it's kind of sick and twisted with the purpose of that. But smart if the goal is moida.
Exactly. It just looks so innocent.
I don't know, but St. Nicholas was the protector of children and unmarried women, so it's a bit poetic. Inside both was a mixture of arsenic, lead, and belladonna. Women would come to her apothecary, typically by word of mouth, because they wanted to do away with their husbands for one reason or another, mostly because of abuse. They would ask for this famous solution by name.
Okay.
As we know, women had no rights back then, and a lot of these so-called women, or let's be real, many were actually children.
Probably. They were married at like 12.
Yeah, forced to marry.
To some old crusty dude.
And a lot of them were forced to marry their assaulter. And if you weren't, you became a sex worker. So the options back then weren't great. So eventually women had to resort to other means. No one else was going to protect them. I'm not saying it's right, but if you're being beaten senseless 24/7, or you're a literal child and no one recognizes you as a human being who deserves to have rights, what are you supposed to do?
It's a very helpless situation. So you either off yourself, which a lot of women probably did back
or run
then
away.
Too. But then they capture you and force you into sex work. Like, it makes me so sad for all the girls and women of our past.
I know. And to know that it's still very prevalent around the world, depending on where you live.
And to know that men still want to do this to us.
And they're trying to take us back to those times. It's just control of women.
Why do they want to control us so much? Are we that scary? Like, we can help you. We can be your allies. There's no reason to like keep us under your thumb all the time.
That small dick brain.
But we will murder you, just FYI.
Poison.
We'll find ways.
Outside of the women who couldn't wait and just used up the bottle in one sitting, most women who got their hands on this special concoction did it one drop at a time.
Okay. Giving slow sickness.
Yeah. Giving their husbands these doses over several days, weeks, or months. They had complete control over the time it took to eliminate them. The first dose caused exhaustion, weakness, and nausea. It would mimic many types of illnesses that were known to come on suddenly and lead to death, which wasn't uncommon at the time.
Right.
The second dose caused severe stomach issues, vomiting, dehydration, diarrhea, and a burning sensation in the digestive system.
Okay.
With the third dose, the symptoms worsened and either killed them or a fourth drop would be needed to finish them off. Getting away from your abuser is a win, but there was something else appealing about this method of murder to the women who chose to take this route. Since it didn't immediately kill them, their husbands had time to repent.
Okay.
Being religious, some women needed this to feel just in what they were doing. They were saving their husbands at the same time. But more importantly, it gave the men time to get their stuff in order.
Make sure the women were taken care of.
More specifically, their wills.
Yeah.
And if they didn't suspect that their wives were the reason they were dying, they might feel compelled to protect their soon-to-be widow from a life of poverty after their death. During any autopsies that might be performed, Aqua Tofana was undetectable.
This sounds like the perfect.
Well, now it is detectable.
Oh,
you can detect poison.
I'm like, can we start a business for future women?
But Giulia didn't do all of this alone. She had help. She had a network of people, of wise women or cunning folk that helped her, including a woman who was thought to be her daughter or stepdaughter. This theory only works if Giulia is Giulia Mangiardi, who we mentioned, who was married to Geronimo's father in Palermo.
Okay.
After his death, the two fled to Rome when Giulia remarried Cesare Ranchetti to stay with her uncle, who was a cleric and astrologer. And if that is the case, that means that Giulia helped other women kill their husbands while having one of her own for a long time. And for a time, she was a professional marriage maker, which maybe she was trying to do a bit of good. She's like, I'm killing some of them, so I might as well see if I can make one work.
And she's like, I'm a matchmaker, and if it doesn't work out, come see me in a few years.
I mean, it's a great setup.
Yeah. She can do it all.
So it's thought that Geronima learned of Giulia's poisonous ways after Geronima herself was forced to marry at 14 years old.
Poor thing.
Her husband was an adulterous spendthrift. He either left Rome at some point to escape creditors or she killed him, because there's no record of him living with her after 1640. After this, she joined Giulia in trafficking the poison, and she was good at it.
Good.
She had made a name for herself as a respected herbalist and astrologer, often hired by clients in the Roman aristocracy. And for her other deeds, she went under the alias Astrologa della Lungara. They created quite the enterprise for themselves.
Good.
But how did it go on for so long without someone spilling the beans?
Mm-hmm.
600's a lot of people.
Because women are good at keeping secrets.
It was a matter of trust.
Yeah.
But it couldn't last forever.
No.
It went on for a long time, but it all came to a halt because of one woman and
she
her
better not
soup.
have tattled. Oh, okay. If it's just soup.
This was in the 1650s. She bought a bottle and put some of the mixture in her husband's soup. Upon giving it to him, she had a change of heart and tried to stop him from eating it.
Oh, no. No, you got to be committed, girl.
No one knows how she warned her husband, but most just assume like she slapped it out of his hand or something.
She's like, I put poison in it.
Because
don't eat it.
The way she did it caused suspicion. She clearly struggled with her decision, but was quickly reminded why she was trying to go to such lengths to rid herself from him, because he immediately beat her until she confessed. And then he turned her into the papal authorities, where she confessed about what it was and where she got it.
Oh, man.
So what happens next to Giulia is not confirmed, or what happens with her at all is not confirmed.
Okay.
The timing of her death is a hot topic. So I'm going to just tell you what the theories are. Either she died in her sleep in 1651, with many not knowing of her involvement at all, and that it was, through Geronima, who took over for her and carried on her work, that eventually we found out
got caught.
of her stuff. Another version is that she escaped to a convent where she continued to manufacture and distribute poison for many years with the nuns' help.
I love that. The nuns are like, fuck those guys.
She either did this for decades until she died, or someone in the church told on her, and she was turned in and was executed by hanging. Or there's also a version that she was turned in and the church was the one to promptly execute her and throw her body off the wall of the church, which is like, that's kind of crazy. So maybe that's a possibility.
Yeah, you don't,
because it's a grim ending. No church should have the right to throw women off of buildings. But
I was just about to say, what kind of church just throws people off the sides of bridges or whatever?
So who knows? Most historians point to her being executed by hanging in 1659 after her confession of assisting in the murder of over 600 men.
Yeah.
Which fills more of the time.
I think that's probably right.
I'm going to vote for this one. I'm going to vote halfsies on this one. This is also because someone else died by execution in 1659. Her daughter, or her stepdaughter, Geronima. Geronima was ratted out by another saleswoman, Giovanna de Grandis, after she was turned in by someone else and interrogated. It all started to unfold.
Yeah, because of one woman who couldn't commit.
Nope.
If you're going to murder your husband all the way.
Geronima did not confess right away. In fact, she held off for months, but she finally did on June 20th, 1659, saying, I've given this liquid to more people than I've got hairs on my head.
That's a lot.
Yeah. This actually was a major criminal case in Rome, known as the Spana prosecution. 40 others were also interrogated for having sold or used the poison. Some were released and never charged. Some were banished or exiled. Others were given papal immunity for their confessions. Some were even sentenced to house arrest for the rest of their lives.
As long as they don't have a husband, that's not a bad
They probably do, though, in which case that's a horrible sentence.
And so here's my take on this. It's like, why wouldn't society in Rome at the time be like, why do so many women want to kill their husbands? And maybe we should, reflect.
Yeah, it took a while.
They don't think that way. They just think bad women want to kill men.
They want to control women. Ultimately, though, it would be Geronima Spana, Giovanna de Grandis, Maria Spinola, Graziosa Farina, and Laura Crispoldi, who were executed by hanging on July 5th, 1659. One other woman, Cecilia Versalino, was hanged on March 6th. Giulia could have been hanged at the same time, and for whatever reason, her name was left out of the history books. I don't know.
Because she was like the godmother.
Maybe
the dream maker, is that what they called her?
I called her the dream maker. When I think of all these women being hanged for this, like I just picture that scene from Handmaid's Tale.
Yes.
Remember when they're all standing up there with the nooses around their neck? So it's either that, or she died in her sleep, or she evaded authorities and killed people through nuns until her death.
I kind of hope that's the true story. I love the thought of vengeful nuns killing men. I don't know why. That sounds like a good movie plot.
Either way, her death continues to be a mystery, leaving a lot of unanswered questions, hundreds of years later.
Yeah.
But this wasn't the end for Aqua Tofana, actually. It became something that everyone was scared of, especially in upper society, because now anybody could kill you.
Yeah.
Right? Mozart actually believed that he was poisoned by Aqua Tofana. He died mysteriously. Of course, a bunch of people think that it was this or this or this, but he kind of died in the way these men did, so...
Did he have a wife that he was mean to?
No, I think it was, isn't the theory is that he like died from jealousy of like another person, another painter or something, or maybe another music person? I said painter. He's a music person.
Yeah,
right?
You confused me for a second. I was like, wait a minute.
I thought it was a rival thing if he was poisoned. But that's the point though. How do you know for sure?
You won it back then because people were dying from random plague-like illnesses all the time. So
exactly. Anyway, very interesting.
That
Giulia
is a very
Tofana.
Interesting story. I like it. We need to.
Kendra likes it.
I know. I apparently want to murder men. I just want women to have options.
Yeah.
There's so many times that we don't, and I can see resorting.
It's scary. And if you try to leave, that's a scary thing too.
Yep.
You know, we see it all the time that women are murdered for wanting or trying to leave.
So Giulia is like a heroine in my mind of her time. She was giving women options that they didn't have any other way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it ended up in murder.
With that many men, I'm sure that there were some that didn't deserve it.
Right. But no woman deserved to be married off at 12 or abused.
If you're a rapist and you are beating them, sorry.
But yeah, I'm sure some girls were just like, I don't like this guy. I don't want to be married to him.
Yeah, some of them might be that way.
Or they were taking advantage of the fact that he was wealthy and she could get his money. There's always that. But it sounds like most of them were probably in a desperate situation and desperate measures are needed to take care of that.
So interesting story.
Very interesting. I've never heard anything about it. So thanks.
Yeah. And it made me think about I didn't know that Italian society was like
so
this.
Harsh.
And that it's still, there's a huge level of it now. And only recently, just recently things have been changing for them. And knowing that there's still men in power, though, like judges who are trying to keep this shit in place, just like we're dealing with now. And it's like, it just brings me to this realization all the time that really, gosh, women around the world, like if we could all come together.
Yes.
If they would just let us run things. Things would be so different.
I know. Have you seen the trend on TikTok where there's some guy that's like, well, next time there's a war, all of you women can go fight instead of the men. And a lot of women are stitching
there
it
wouldn't
and
be a
saying,
war.
Okay, yeah, give us 45 minutes and we're done because we're all going to get together and talk about it because none of us want senseless death and weapons. Like, that's not a woman thing. We don't want to go fight with tanks. We really just want to sit around and talk.
Life would be far different.
I think innately all of us want to just live in peace and harmony. And I think you've said it before on here, like we represent the mother, the love, like that is what we bring in our femininity. And the masculine side is where all that anger and hate and greed really comes from.
Yeah.
I'm not saying all men are bad, but I kind of believe that sometimes.
And then throw in all the needing to be in control sexually and just all this crap. Anyway, that's Giulia.
Well, I'm glad she was there to help the 600 plus women that needed her services at the time for whatever reason they had. Well, this was an interesting mix today.
It was.
We had Skinwalker.
Yep.
We had a guy who potentially killed and ate his people in his party. Was it, on purpose or accidental? Who knows what it is? That was like a crazy story. Then we had a Bubba the ghost and
who is Candyman. I'm convinced.
Who seemed scarier than maybe he really was. And then we had Giulia, who was doing a service to women all over Italy in the 17th century.
Definitely an interesting mix. Well, we hope you guys enjoyed it.
Please let us know any ideas you have for future episodes. Always write in your stories.
Please send those to lucidlabpodcast@gmail.com. And please go to Apple, Spotify, anywhere you can leave a review or leave us some stars. We really appreciate it.
YouTube comments are always great too. And we will be on social media with some images from these mini episodes. We are on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok at Lucid Lab Podcast, all one word.
We hope you are having a great start to your summer.
I know I am.
Or a great start to your winter, wherever you live.
True. Yeah, if you're in Australia, it's wintertime. we'll be back next week with another interesting tale.
It's a bloody one.
Jessica's bringing it, so be ready. And in the meantime,
stay lucid.
See you soon. Bye.